Got it. There we go. Right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Meet the Founder event with CAVA and Heart of England Foundation. So today we're going to focus primarily on the latest fund that is available from Solihull Council through the Heart of England, but we'll talk about more than that. So my name is Aline Beaublin, and I work for CAVA, and I am delivery manager for Solihull and for Stratford. And I'll let Ollie introduce himself as well.
Morning, everyone. My name is Ollie Shiel. I'm a Group Funding and Development Officer for CAVA. So I'm able to help on almost anything in terms of fundraising and governance and all sorts of other things. So if anyone needs any support, very happy to help.
Thank you, Ollie. Over to Freya.
Hi there. Yes, I'm Freya, and I'm a grants officer from the Heart of England Foundation.
And we're lucky as well to have today Sham from Heart of England. Sham.
Hi, I'm Sham, Senior Manager of Programmes at the Foundation.
Thank you. So welcome everyone to this workshop. And if you would like to continue sharing your contact details and the organisation that you're supporting in the chat, that would be amazing for you to connect with other people. So a short presentation, first of all, about CAVA, and then I'll hand over to Freya. I think most of you are quite familiar with CAVA. A few households. We're going to keep you muted while we're doing the presentation, but please, if you have any questions while we're presenting, ask them in the chat and we'll pick those up when we come towards the end. As you can see, this event is recorded and we will be sending you a link to the recording after the event. We will also be sharing some of the slides, well, most of the slides from this session as well. Now, CAVA is actually stands for Warwickshire Community and Voluntary Action. We are present across the whole of Warwickshire and Solihull, and we are providing infrastructure support for the breadth of voluntary and community organisation and faith organisation that exist in the sector. We are here to help raise funding for you and as well help you access volunteering. So here is a snapshot as to where we work. We are based on a number of localities. And although this specific workshop is focusing on the organisation that deliver in Solihull, as you can see, we have offices around the whole of Warwickshire. So feel free after this event to look on our website if you want to get some contact details for any other localities around. Usually we have a volunteering coordinator and a funding and group development officer for each of those localities. And for Solihull, we also have a relationship officer that primarily focuses on obtaining sponsorships from the corporate element of the businesses in the borough. So our two areas of focus are around volunteering, and that is to both help organizations find the right people to volunteer for them, but also help individuals identify the organization that they think will best fit their aspirations. And around that volunteering is a lot of training as well to make sure people understand how they can volunteer and to make sure organizations safeguard and manage properly the volunteers that support them. And the second element of what we do is that group development, which are people like Ollie, for example, who are funding and group development officers, will support your organizations on identifying the right legal structure for yourselves or the right constitution you would want to have, giving you some advice on governance as well. We also do some specific training, either one-to-one or in sessions like this one or face-to-face. And as you can see here on the screen, we have quite a strong element on funding, and previous couple of slides highlighted how much we actually managed to secure for the VCSC in Warwickshire and Solihull in the past 12 months. So again, if you want to contact us, you'll have a link here for that. CAVA is a charity itself. We've been established for quite a long time, for about, I think, through a number of mergers and regrouping for about 15 years. And it would be great if you're not already a member, if you could register to be a member. This is a free membership. That membership allows us to represent you extensively with local authorities and other key players in the VCSC. It also allows us to contribute to our surveys, to contribute to our annual general meeting as well and have a voting right. But more than that, you will be able to access discounted rates for a breadth of departments that can support your organization. So from HR all the way through to payroll and finance and telecom. And there's quite a few things on our website to look at. So please do register either as an individual or if you're not constituted yet, or as a constituted organization. Now, hopefully this continue working. Yes, so we also have quite a few events in the coming weeks. Tomorrow we have an event in Solihull, which is a face-to-face event looking at DBS and how to approach disclosure barring services. So this is still open for registration for another few hours if you are interested in coming to see us at the core. And we have another couple of online events planned, one around cyber training. Now, very often we find within the VCSC organizations are not as clued up as private companies on how to protect themselves. So I would really encourage you to connect to that if you feel this would be a benefit. And in the final workshop is around funding around sports. And this actually includes accessibility and eligibility for schools. So if you're working in partnership with schools, or if you know of schools who would be potentially interested, please let them know of that event. There is a link that you will receive as well to register directly on Eventbrite, and we would really encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter and to follow us on social media and on Eventbrite directly to receive notifications as soon as our events are actually released for registration. So this is all for me for CAVA. And again, I anticipate some of you already know all of this, but I can see that we have some organizations present today who haven't been around before, so not with us anyway. So I hope that was of use. And now if that's going to work for you, Fredia, please, over to you.
All right, well, hi, everyone. 1 second, I'll just share my screen as well so everybody can see. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes, Freya.
Yep. All right, brilliant. All right, well, of course, primarily we're here to talk about the new fund, which is the Solihull Voluntary Sector Resilience Fund, which is what everyone wants to hear about today. But I'll also go through some of the other funds that we have available for groups in Solihull as well, just so that everybody knows what is available at the moment. And of course, this is the perfect opportunity as well to talk about these and for you to ask your questions and for us to really get a better idea of what's happening. But first, just in case some of you haven't worked with us before, I'll just give you a brief introduction to the foundation itself. So as some of you might know, we are a charity and we were founded in 1995. So we've been running for quite a while now. And we're actually a part of a network of 47 different community organisations across the UK. And we raise money to support mostly smaller organisations across the West Midlands and Warwickshire. And although this reach is quite wide, we are actually a very small group of 10 members of staff and 12 trustees. And of the members of staff, there are 3 grants officers who are those who would be looking at your applications and assessing them to then send them to the panels that we manage. So just have an idea about funding opportunities in general. Outside of the specific funds that we have that are to do with actuality, like the cost of living crisis at the moment, or what we had during COVID, for example, most of our grants enter into 4 broad themes, which are stronger communities, health and well-being, employment skills and training, and to a lesser extent also arts and culture and heritage as well. And at the moment, we have 18 active funds, of which 8 are available to organisations in Solihull. And I will go over each of these funds with you quite briefly really today, again, so that you can all ask your questions at the end and so that we can discuss them. And of course, principally, the Solihull Voluntary Sector Resilience Fund, as the deadlines for that one are coming up now. So it's be good for us to have a look into it. All right, so the Solihull Voluntary Sector Resilience Fund. As you know, this fund was very recently set up in order to support VCSE organisations and community spaces in Solihull so that they can stay open and respond to the cost of living crisis. For this fund, you can apply to up to £5,000. And in this case, because it is a resilience fund, you can only apply once, which isn't the case with other funds that we have that are active over longer periods of time, potentially. And here, the two fund priorities are to support core costs and project costs. So I'm sure most of you know what these mean, but in this case, core costs would be potentially towards utilities or rents, and these mean essential costs that your organization needs to simply stay running and stay active. And so in this case, successful applications would have to be able to demonstrate how your organization is facing an increase in these costs, or how they might be able to support beneficiaries who are also facing them. When it comes to project costs, this may mean either creating a new project or extending an existing project that would support people addressing cost of living pressures. And so again, this would mean demonstrating that the demand for support to households has increased, but resources are limited. And so this might include anything to do with food poverty, or offering a warm space for people to stay in, or supporting people's mental health, or tackling social inequalities of all kinds. And so again, as you can see here, the deadline for these applications is the 20th of February. So that is in 12 days, which is quite short period of time. So I do advise you to ask all of the questions that you need to ask today, so that we can go over it, and so that people can start submitting applications sooner rather than later, so that we can then go over them and get the support you need as soon as possible. And another important thing to know is that these grants need to be spent by the 31st of May, which again is quite a short period of time as well. But again, this is linked to the nature itself of the fund, which is a resilience fund, which is different to other funds that we might manage that can be spent in a longer period of time, because they're in that period. All right. So if anybody wants any more information concerning this fund, we can go over it in more detail when we can have a bit more of a conversation about it later. All right. Well, another fund that we really liked to talk to you about today is the WMCA Community Green Grants, because this is an absolutely brilliant opportunity, but unfortunately we haven't received very many applications from the Solihull organisations for it yet. Many from around the West Midlands, but we'd really like to see some more applications from Solihull. So this is mostly addressed to any organisations that might be looking to set up a project to do with the conservation or the development of green and blue spaces in the area. And for this one, especially, we have small grants and large grants available, which go from £3,000 to £25,000 for the small grants, and for larger grants from £25,000 to £100,000. And there is absolutely no deadline at present, so groups can apply whenever, and well, of course as soon as well. But for now, we don't have a limit when it comes to time for this particular one. And as you can see here, priority will be given to projects in areas of multiple deprivation and communities with limited access to green spaces, because this is also, their objective is also to encourage people to use these green spaces and to reunite in them. And there you go. Another fund, I'll go through the other funds that we also have available now, which are more general funds potentially, but again, all ones that you can consider, and also that you can ask questions about, and as you feel fit. So a more general fund that we manage is the Coventry, Solihull and Warwickshire Fund, for which panels meet very regularly, and so it's a good way to have an answer fairly quickly from us. For this particular fund, you can apply to up for £2,000, and there is no deadline for applications. Usually you'd be notified within 10 weeks of submitting your application. This particular fund supports projects tackling disadvantage or social inclusion, and provides support for a very broad range of activities and a broad range of different organisations as well. There you go. Secondly, the Community Energy and Warwickshire Fund, which again, for this particular fund, you can apply for up to £2,000. Again, there is no deadline because it is a similar panel to the previous fund. So again, you would get a response fairly quickly with this particular one. And this fund in particular aims to support projects which hope to improve energy efficiency. So this can be setting up solar panels, or finding various ways to become more sustainable, whether this be environmentally speaking or even financially speaking when it comes to energy usage. Sorry, did somebody say something? Oh, I just thought I heard somebody ask a question. All right. And yes, of course, when it comes to this fund, organizations tend to apply for capital items. So this is just a very quick reminder to make sure to submit quotations with said requests. Next up is the Dulverton Trust. for which you can apply for slightly more money in this case, up to £5,000. The panel for the Dolverton Trust does meet less regularly than the other funds that we manage. And it does also have some more specific criteria as to what beneficiaries you might be working with and that sort of thing. So for this one, it's very advisable. I mean, for all of them, of course, but for this one in particular, it's advisable to look at the fund fact sheet and just make sure that your project is in line with this particular fund's priorities. But their very general priorities would be youth opportunities, general welfare, conservation, and heritage. And for example, recently, actually, we awarded £5,000 to support a befriending and advocacy project for young refugees from this particular fund. And finally, the Harry Payne Fund. And this fund will fund any organisation within a 25-mile radius of Birmingham. And so Solihull fits into that geographic area. And they are interested in supporting a very wide variety, actually, of different activities, and this including core costs. And so contrary to the fund that we're looking at today, which is the Resilience Fund supporting core costs in the context of the cost of living crisis, the Harry Payne Fund also supports core costs in a more general sense outside of that specific context. Here grants range from normally around £250 to £2,000. And your annual income must also be under £500,000, which is the case for most of the funds that we manage. And for example, recently we awarded £1,000 to support disadvantaged members of an under 16-year-old girls handball team, and so that they could participate in the club and actually even join the National League. So that was quite a nice one. I thought I'd share with you. So there you go. So that's again a very brief overview, of course, of all the funds that we have available. More information is of course available on the website and on each fund fact sheet, and of course we are also here to give you any more information if there's anyone in particular that took your fancy. Oh, here we go. All right, so just to go over a very brief eligibility checklist, really. This is very general for applying to the Heart of England in general, but again, each fund also can have more specific eligibility criteria. So again, that's something to look into for each fund that you might be applying for. So the first question to be asked is, what type of organisation are you? I mean, we support most organisations really. So that can be charities, CIOs, unincorporated clubs or associations, CICs, companies limited by guarantee. On the contrary, for example, we don't support individuals or national organisations, and we also have quite strict criteria when it comes to supporting companies limited by shares and things like that. But again, each fund also does have differences when it comes to what kind of organisations they prefer to support. So just make sure to look into that. How much do you need? Well, as you saw in each different fund, normally you can apply for up to 2,000, sometimes 5,000. And in the case of WMCA, that augments quite a lot. But of course, again, that's just something that you should look into so that you can also plan your delivery in correspondence to the amount that you might be able to apply for. Who has overall responsibility? And this is very basically just to do with governance, because we obviously look for organisations that have stable governance in place. And that normally means having at least 3 members of your managing committee who are unrelated. So if you're a company, that would be 3 directors. If you're a charity, that would be 3 trustees, and so on. Do you have the necessary documents in place? Of course, administration is never great for anybody, but we do have a few checks that we do concerning the documents that you'd need to submit to us with your application. To name a few, that would be safeguarding policy or equal opportunities policy as well. We also ask for your governing documents, which may be a constitution or something less official if you're unincorporated. But we do ask for some kind of evidence of what your governance looks like. We also ask for a bank statement to make sure that you have a bank account, which is another element we check for. We also ask for annual accounts of the past financial year, which again, I mean, sometimes when smaller organisations apply, sort of say, well, we don't have any official accounts, but that's absolutely fine. We normally just ask for a forecast as well, if that's the case. Again, just to have an idea of what your year is looking like more than anything else. What is your annual income? As I said, for the Harry Payne Fund, for example, we have a limit of £500,000 of income, which is the case for most of our funds. But again, as I said, some of them have lower levels. For example, the Community Energy Warwickshire Fund has imposed a limit of £250,000. So again, if you do have a higher income, then that's something that you would want to look into. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning, we do aim to support smaller organizations in general. So most of the time, this is not even a question that comes up. Again, bank accounts, and that would be verified with the bank statement that you would send to us. Because of course, if you would like a grant, then it would be useful to have a bank account, because without it, it could be a little bit difficult. And finally, how many grants from this foundation do you have? Quite simply, our rule of thumb is that you can have 1 grant per fund per year from the foundation. So this means that if you've had a grant from the Harry Payne Fund in December last year, you won't be able to apply again to that particular fund until December this year, as it were, but you could apply for a different fund. And this also counts for the new resilience fund that we were talking about at the beginning. So if you have a grant from the Heart of England Foundation already, that does not stop you in any way from applying to this new fund, just so you know, in case that was a question. How to apply? I mean, I don't know how many of you, I know some of you have definitely applied to the Heart of England before, so most of you would already be aware of this process. But of course, just as you know, all of our applications are submitted online through our website and through each fund that you can access very, very easily, actually. And we will ask for supporting documents to go with the application, as I listed earlier. But again, they are all listed in the application form so that you can follow that and add them as you go along. Application deadlines do change, of course, depending on the fund that you're applying to. Of course, as we talked about at the beginning, for this new fund, it is coming up quite soon, so it'd be something to look into as soon as you can. Assessments, when we say that they take up to 10 weeks, normally again the response can be between 8 and 12 weeks, because it's just good to bear in mind that when you submit your application, grants officers might at that time be finishing off assessments for a panel that's coming up in a week's time or something like that, so we might not be able to look at the application as soon as it comes in. So you just got to keep in mind that there's a time for that, and then a time for us to assess and get back to you and ask questions if we have any, and then for that application to then go to the panel and for a decision to be made. So there's just a certain amount of time that needs to be considered. And of course, because we don't support retrospective funding, it means that we can only fund a project that's going to happen and not something that's already been paid for, as it were. And that might be a question, for example, that comes up when it comes to the resilience fund, because we know that a lot of bills when it linked to the cost of living crisis have already been paid. And unfortunately, that's not something that we can now support with this fund. So we can only support things that you are yet to pay. And finally, when it comes to end of grant monitoring, most of our funds, which if to not say all, require you to fill in an end of grant monitoring report, normally about a month after you finish spending the grant. And this is quite simply just for us to see how your project went, for you to also put it all onto paper, and for you to have an idea of how it went in comparison to what you'd planned at the beginning when you applied. And the application form is very easy to fill in. It resembles the first application form that you would have filled in, and you have all of the information already there so that you have a comparison for reference, as it were. Finally, before we answer some questions, just a few hints and tips, really. As I mentioned, we have fund fact sheets for each of the funds that we manage, and again, these are very, they're very well developed, actually. I didn't do them, but our marketing officer is very good at that. And so they are all very clear and have all the information that you need in them. So just make sure to pay attention to those things, because it does happen quite often that the fund fact sheet might say that fund does not support companies and a company applies. And so it's unfortunate for us to have to go back to that organization and say, we are sorry, but you would be ineligible for that. And, and if they've put all the effort in at the beginning and it was in writing, it's a bit of a shame. Again, just with supporting documents, it's good to try and have everything ready and sorted with your application. If you have any trouble with finding your supporting documents, or if you don't understand potentially what you need to supply, just make sure you get in touch with us first, because it's always faster and more efficient to pick up the phone and talk to us. I mean, I have to say, I've worked for the foundation for almost a year now, and I'm quite impressed on how easy it is for organizations to get in touch with us. I think if you do call, we will answer, and we'll have time to talk you through the process. So yeah, just make sure that you take that option, take advantage, as it were. And that goes similarly for checking our essential information. The website is also designed for applicants to be able to access the information they need as easily as possible. We have gotten together as a team quite often, actually, to go over the information that we have on the website and discussed it to try and make it as accessible and useful as possible for people. So yeah, again, do take advantage of that. Again, when it comes to being clear and concise in applications, and do me a favor, I'll be reading the applications. It just means to be, again, as clear as you can, because just to know that, a human being that doesn't necessarily know very well how your organization works or what your project is going to be reading that application. So just make sure that it's as understandable as possible. And so, because the more questions we have afterwards, the more time it will take as well for the application to be processed and be sent to panel. So it's just a time saver for everybody if you use English, as it were. It says save here in capital letters, and I think the capital letters are probably a very good idea here, because it does happen that applicants will start an application, put so much time and effort into it, but forget to save if they are leaving the application to continue on later, which is a great shame, and it doesn't do anybody any good. So yeah, it's a very simple thing, but do just remember to click save, because it's very important, trust me. And finally is ask a friend, because when we think about writing an application, especially if you haven't written many applications in the past, it's very good to just ask somebody who's not got anything to do with your organization to have a read of the application that you're about to submit. And because if it's clear to them and they have a good idea of what you're doing, and then it means that we will also be able to understand it very well, as it were. So yeah, those are just the little hints and tips, really. I'm sure we have many more, but it'll also depend on your experience of grant applications and whatnot. So any questions is the main event, really.
Yes, please, Freya.
Yeah. I just say myself and Sham will be answering any questions you have, because
I might have missed the beginning because I've just been bringing on a new volunteer here today. The fund that is coming up, which one is that one, Freya?
That's the Solihull Voluntary Resilience Fund.
Oh, that's
the first one, yeah.
It's currently out at the moment, and the deadline's on the 20th of Feb.
20th of Feb, yeah, because I've tried about 3 times with the Heart of England, but we've got around it now with the help with CAVA and Solihull Council. It's the constitution they have to change, but the same application for the 3 times that it was declined went to another big funder, and I received that within. I just find it very, very that one fund asks for one constitution, and then another you have to change some bits and bobs in it. So it's like, we have to go around the weekend to try and, I just find it very, I don't know if the others have had that problem with when you send off funded applications. It's just very, very, they don't make it easy for us. That's what I'm finding.
In terms of the constitution and things like that, the governance, that the information that we require, it is standard in grant making. But obviously I can't comment on individual experiences.
But we've got there now. I mean, it's took us, but I just find it very your constitution, it's brought me funding in, but when the Heart of England, it was 3 times it was rejected. So we're going to have
I think Teresa, if I may interject, it's
4th time lucky.
We really have to adhere by the rules that apply.
Oh, absolutely. But just
as you know, Teresa, we have spent a lot of time looking at applications, and something that Teresa does do quite well is draft her applications. So as a reminder from us as well at CAVA, we also support, like Freya and Sham would, reviewing your applications before you send them through. And also making a lot of recommendations on what needs to change to put you at the front end of you know, being well accepted and well presented for your project. So yes, thank you, Teresa. Claire,
I've invited Freya. If you'd like, do you come out to see the projects? Because I'd love to invite you over to see the wellbeing work that we're growing over here in the north. Would be amazing for you to, it'd be good for you to come over and see what we're doing.
Yes, and maybe you can take that offline so that we can have other people.
Fantastic.
Who can ask
questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Claire, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm here from Marston Green Parish Hall in Marston Green. And what it is, I'm looking to apply because our heating system at the hall is inadequate. It's costing us a lot to run, so we're looking to upgrade it. Got a quotation for and everything. Is this fund the sort of fund I should be looking at, or is it not appropriate? I wanted to check before I don't waste time filling it out for no good reason.
Not the resilience fund, because I think what you're describing is a bigger issue, not really associated with the cost of living. But have you been working with the community development team on this?
On various bits and pieces, yeah.
Okay.
Well, where the cost of living sort of came in was the fact that obviously our heating costs have gone through the roof. So in order to maintain the events, we have like our elderly people who come for warm hubs and things like that. In order to continue down that road, we're going to struggle if we continue with our system. So there's two things there. There's a short-term issue and then there's a longer-term problem. It might be that you and I make contact and have a discussion about trying to solve the longer-term issue. Can you pop your email address in the chat function and then I'll drop you a line outside of the meeting? I might have a few other suggestions for you. Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, would it be okay for you to stop sharing the screen? Oh, yes, of course.
Can I add something else in terms of hints and tips, something that's come up recently? And it's to do when people are requesting an application form. It's really important to do two things when you're registering your interest for an application. Double check the spelling on your email address, because if there is a mistake and then you're trying to access it at a later date, it won't let you because it won't recognize it. And B, make a note of any passwords and things like that, because it has to be exact like any passwords and email addresses. And if there's any inconsistencies, it won't let you in, and then it leads to lots of frustrations because people can't access their work, etc., and then it's time consuming. So just little things, just make a note of the email address, but also when you're registering, just double check that it is, typos and things can happen, and that's normal. But if it can be resolved beforehand rather than trying to work out what's gone wrong, then that saves a lot of frustration for everybody.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. And as well, there is a functionality, I think, in your application process where you can save a PDF version of your draft. So you can also take that offline and as Freya was saying, give that to somebody else to read to make sure it reads well before you submit it. Yes, Mel, you have a question.
Good morning. Hello.
Morning.
I just wanted to ask a question about the grants and the applications, but are you able to apply for more than one of these for different projects?
Yes. So you can have, say, for example, the Resilience Fund, the Harry Payne, the CSW Fund. You can have one of each of those per 12 months. So you can have more than one grant at any time.
What if I wanted to apply for the same grant? So say, for example, I'm interested in the inclusion one, the disadvantaged and social inclusion one, but because we run 9 different projects, would I be able to apply for the same grant?
No,
but for
no. So you could apply for up to the total maximum available for as many of those projects as you could. So if it was a larger fund, it would be easier. But so for £2,000, if there were 2 of your projects and you needed £1,000 each, you could apply for 2 of those projects, but you can only apply for that grant once per 12 months.
So what you would do, Mel, you would put your 2 projects into the same application. and detail that there are 2 projects with whatever fund is going to, grant amount requested is going to which project.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from anyone on anything, especially on the green funds potentially? Anyone interested on the diversity, biodiversity side, on energy saving, all those kind of arenas? Anyone prompted to do that? We were very keen at CAVA to see this well represented for the Solihull area. So any questions?
Would that include something to do along the lines of like an allotment and stuff for our youth projects to like grow their own produce and things like that? Would that come under that kind of element? Because I've had a few requests from the girls and some of the parents, in fact, the ones that are facing crisis in terms of food poverty, saying, well, how can we help ourselves, so to speak? And is there some kind of a workshop or training around growing your own food and your produce for you and your family and that kind of stuff? So maybe we could put a budget, a bid in around that.
Yeah, that would be, I think that would fit the bill, wouldn't it, Freya?
Yeah, if it's about resources to support people to be self-sufficient and things like that, yeah.
Definitely food for thought then. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. And what about a project where, let's say it's a small childcare organization, holiday club or something like that, and they want to create a patch of greenery in their courtyard for children to experience biodiversity and growing their own vegetable. Is that something they could look at funding through that project?
Which fund are you thinking?
The second one,
WMC.
I think that, yes.
So it would have to be open to the wider public as well. It couldn't just be open to the school or nursery community. But if there are any projects that are thinking about the Green Fund, Green Grants, then what I would suggest is get in touch and we'll introduce you to our colleague Ruth Burgess, who works at the West Midlands Combined Authority. So it's a joint partnership with the West Midlands Combined Authority and Heart of England. And whilst we're the experts in grant making, she's the expert on all things green. So I do advise a conversation with Ruth. Okay. So if you are thinking, get in touch and we can introduce you.
Yeah, their contact details are also on the fund fact sheet for that particular fund as well. In case
thank you. So any other questions from anyone? Okay, I'd like to share again what we can do here at CAVA in terms of funding and fundraising. If I'm thinking, Mel, you have shared how many projects you have, which is really extensive. It's amazing to see where Mel is at. You started during lockdown, and to see where you're at 3 years on. It's just fantastic how you've grown your organization.
And I obviously have to thank CAVA, because if it weren't for CAVA, and I started off with £150, like it's crazy, out of my kitchen. And now we're running 9 different projects, supporting 152 girls and young women across Birmingham. So it's CAVA's helped me massively in terms of my CIC and my own personal and professional growth. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate that. So remember, we can help you if you detail your project to us. And we have a very simple form that you can fill in, a sort of case for support form that will be helpful for any application you might want to make. If you share what your project is, if you share the amount of money you're looking at and what main sections you have in terms of funding needs and financial needs, we can help you identify which grants, not just with the Heart of England, but wider as well, this project could be eligible for. And although we can't write your funding applications for you, as I said earlier on, we can review those and make sure you are, there might only be 5 or 6 areas where you can put paragraphs, but if you don't answer the question in the right place, you make the life of the likes of Freya and Sham a lot harder to review your application, and we can help you make sure you are pitching in the right space for the project that you're looking at realizing for your communities. So remember all of that, and we are here to help before you apply and once you have applied as well. And anything else you think you might want to share on that, Ollie, that I may not have covered?
The only other thing I would mention is that Freya mentioned that there's certain policies that are required. And of course, if you do have policy gaps, And that's something we can also help with in making sure that you've got all of the relevant policies in place. It's very easy for us to help you with that. And we're not a regulator, so we're not trying to catch you out. We're purely just here to help and help you become stronger. So do reach out if you've got any concerns about that.
Yes, and that's a really good point as well, in terms of reviewing your governance and your policies regularly, because it is something that the likes of Heart of England will check. If you have a safeguarding policy for children and vulnerable adults and other people, this needs to be reviewed regularly, because statutory mandates and demands will change regularly. You have to keep on top of all of that. So remember to check your policies and procedures on a regular basis. And we tend to have the latest information at our fingertips, so we can help you with those reviews as well. And we can also help with bigger business planning as well. So if you want to develop, as Mel said, from Go Girl Birmingham, if you have bigger plans and you want to grow your organization, we may not be able to do everything in-house at CAVA, but we can signpost you to the likes of ISE or Blue Orchid or Enterprise for Success within the borough, and really grow you as an entrepreneur. Whether you have a charity or a CIC or any kind of social enterprise, you do need to be business savvy to sustain your organization financially and to sustain the delivery and the benefits to your communities. Right, well, unless anybody has anything else. Oh, sorry, Sham, you were about to say something.
Just to add that once you leave the call and you think, oh, you remembered something that you really wanted to ask, then you're more than welcome to get in touch by telephone or email. All of our contact details are on our website, so you are welcome to call anytime.
Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions or any point, I wanted to thank all of you for joining. And remember, we're going to send those slides out to you. We will also send you a link to the recording. And whether it's Heart of England or all of us at CAVA, we're here to help wherever we can. Thank you very much for attending today. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Nice to see you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Amazing, Aileen.
Bye.